Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about functions. Functions are pretty common in larger programs. All they really help you do is organize your code. The purpose of a function is to write a bunch of code and then give it a name so that when you need to use that code again, you just refer to the name instead of having to copy paste the code every time you need it. And sometimes functions need to be told some data. We call those arguments because they use those arguments to compute whatever they're computing. And sometimes we also have a function return a value. In other words, it like returns the result. These are more like functions that compute mathematical formulas or whatever. Other functions just print things, they don't return anything. Some functions have no arguments, they don't need any data, and so forth. So you always write a function with the word def at the front, and then there's a function that has no arguments. Let's make a function with an argument. It prints it. We can make a function with two arguments. These actually can't all be called the same thing. Here's my func3, AB. And so on. You can make an argument that has a default, which means if it's not provided, it'll just assume a value. Like that. Let's show using each of these. So here's how you use my func. It's got no arguments, so you just put empty parentheses. This one requires an input, so I'll put a number. This one requires two inputs. And this one's got two different variations. You can do all three inputs, or you could just do the two inputs. So here, arg3 was a 5 because I didn't provide the value, so it used the default 5. And then your function, regardless of how many inputs it has, could return a value if it so chooses. You do some computation or whatever. And so when you run it, in this kind of situation, since my func5 doesn't print anything, it won't be obvious anything actually happened. When it returns, you probably want to save the return value. Otherwise, why did you use the function? And then it's your choice what you do with it. So there's the X. Back in the olden days, they used to call functions that returned values, actual functions. The ones that did not return values, they call those procedures. So you may see that come up sometimes, but they're really all functions. Just sometimes you return, sometimes you don't. Depends on what your function is, what its purpose is. If you got a bunch of code that prints a bunch of stuff, you may still give it a function just because you want to put it all together under one name. But obviously functions are also good when you need to calculate things. So let's build a slightly more complicated example than the other videos. This will be a shopping cart. So we're going to have some products, and then you're going to be able to add products to your cart, and we're going to use a function to do a variety of things like listing your cart, calculating the total, calculating shipping, and so forth. So first, let's make some products. Like the prior video, we're going to have a list of dictionaries. I have no idea if these prices are correct. Some products don't have tax because, actually I don't know why, but like fruits and vegetables and stuff I think don't have tax. So we'll have a variable for that, or a key and value inside each dictionary. So we'll say bananas not text. Our cart's going to start empty. Now let's make a function that will show you all the products that are available to you. It's got no arguments because it could just refer to this list of products above. And we're going to go through all of the products. So I want to put a number on the screen so that the person can type, I want product number 2. That way they don't have to type the whole name out. So we're going to use I for that number, and it will go through the range, however many products there are. And so we'll print the I value, and then the product name, and then the price with $sign. And going to put those values in. So I is, we'll keep it at 0. So the first product will be number 0. Then we want to go through the list, products at position I. That is one of those dictionaries now. And then we get the name. And then likewise, we need to get the price. So products I price. And then I want to print another number at the end that lets you quit. So if they're like 3 products, it'll say 0, 1, 2, and then it'll say number 3 is the option for quit. Called done. And so what number is that? That'll be the count of products, because it'll go 0, 1, 2, and then 3 will be the count. So I'll get that count. All right, so anyway, to test this, let's just execute the function. Make sure that works right. I want to put a blank line also. Okay, so it's listing all the products correctly, and we have our third option for done. And let's start the main loop. This will go forever unless you say done. You're going to list the products. Then we're going to get the choice, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And we'll do an if. The choice is that last one, which we know would be the length. Well, that's when we get out of here. Otherwise, we'll do something with it. We have to actually add it to our cart. But you might want multiple, bananas. So we need to ask how many you want. How many of these things? And we'll put the name of the product. Choice is the number 0, 1, 2 or whatever. So we'll use that as the position in the products list. And that's all I'm going to do for the moment. I just want to check if it works. So, we have 2 list products. So let's get rid of this one, because now we have our loop. Okay, so product 0, and then how many you want. Okay, list them again. 3 is done. So that's good. I might want to put a blank line at the top there too. Okay, now we need to add something to the cart. So here I got the cart. When you choose a count, I want to add the product and the count to the cart. So cart append, and then I'm going to get the product. And I need to also remember how many you put in the cart. So I need to make a little pair, or we call it a tuple. So double parentheses here, because I'm going to put parentheses product, comma, count. So every item in the cart will be a pair of things in parentheses. Again, that's called a tuple. We don't have a whole topic on tuples or videos or anything, because it's a simple idea, but technically a tuple is different than a list, different than a dictionary. It's another type of data structure, and tuples behave like lists because you can use brackets to get to the positions in the tuple. So you'll see that in a second here. So if we append to the cart, then When I'm done with the loop, let's just print what the cart is to make sure that that all worked. Okay, so if I do 2 and I get 10 bananas and then I'm done, you see here's the whole banana product item, and then it's actually all in a tuple with a 10 after it, and then that's all in the list called cart. So I can add multiple items, presumably, if I run this again. I can add 10 bananas and 1 peanut butter. See, now they're both in there. Okay, now I'd like to list my carts in a little nicer format, so let's make a function for listing the cart. Again, we're going to put a blank line, and we'll say your cart. Now we need to go through every item that's going through the list, and we're going to say how many you have times the name, the price per item. So first item bracket 1, since we're going through the cart and everything in the cart is a tuple, the thing at position 0 is the product, the thing at position 1 is the count. So if I say item bracket 1, I'm getting the count. If I say item bracket 0, I'm getting the dictionary. So item 1 for the count, item 0 name for the name, and item 0 price for the price. And blank line at the end. And so in the loop, we'll list the cart on every repeat of the loop. Cart's currently empty. If I add 10 bananas, I have 10 times banana. If I add a GIF, I have both of those. I don't really need this anymore because I have a nice print. Now we need to calculate the total of the cart. This is a function that will return the calculation. So it's just going to go through every item and multiply its price times the count of items. So we're going to have to keep track of how many dollars we have so far. Go through every item. And actually we need to worry about tax. So if item bracket 0, which again is the actual dictionary, taxed with the true or false, then our total actually increases by 7% times the price times the count. Count and price. Otherwise, it does not multiply by 1.07. So it's just regular multiplication. And once the loop is finished, you've gone through all the items, you want to return the total that it figured out. So once we've printed the cart, we can then print the total in dollars, and we can just say calc total. So I don't have to do all that calculation here. I can just refer to the function for that purpose. 10 bananas. So there's my total so far, no tax. Add a GIF, plus the GIF and a little bit of tax. Get some Cloroxes and so forth. It's really a subtotal, I guess, because there's no shipping. Oh, subtotals without tax. So that is the total, but now we need to worry about shipping. So we'll say when you click done or type done, we'll then ask you, are you shipping to Florida or outside of Florida? And it'll be 2 different shipping prices. So we'll need a function called calc shipping. This will be the last one. This one will have an argument. State will be like FL or something else. And first we need to count how many items we have because that's kind of the weight. go through the cart again, add the counts, and then if state is Florida, the price is going to be whatever, something like that. And then if it's not Florida, it costs more. So to use this, we need to ask the user which state they're in, and then we'll execute this function. That's down here. When they've typed done, we'll then say, okay, what's your state? So we'll say you have to type a 2-letter code, and then we'll calculate the total based on that state. It's original total, so we'll call it maybe final total. Original total of the cart with the taxes plus the shipping to that state. And print the final answer. $. And final blank line. So 10 bananas, 5 Cloroxes, 1 Jif. Done. Shipping to California. That's the total cost with shipping. Okay, so as far as the program goes, I'd say it's pretty simple because this bit of code is just a loop that says show the cart, show the products, and then get the choice. So that all kind of makes sense if you just read off what it does in order. And then all the hard parts are isolated into individual functions, so they're not all mixed together. So if you realize you have a problem with the shipping calculation, you know it's probably up here. If you have a problem with the way it's listing the products, you know it's in this function because the name is list products, right? So the idea of functions is to better organize your code. And depending on what kind of function you need, you may have to return a value that's calculated. And you may also need to have some sort of input to help you calculate the value. Whereas other functions don't need that. They just typically print things through the screen. So this code is easier to manage. It's easier to find out what each part is doing because every part has a name, except this part, which has no name, but it's a short part of code. So that's the purpose of functions.